I'm gonna start and lead this song off, but I want everybody to join in with me. And it's a song that we sang, and I still do from time to time, but it's an invitational song into the movement. The songs we sang has meaning. A lot of people didn't understand and know that, but this particular song that I'm going to ask that we sing a little bit of tonight is a song that gives the message. You know, it's not just blowing in the wind. It's the invitational song. And this is what we want people to do. Get on board, children, children, get on board, children, children, get on board, children, children. Let's fight for human rights. Once more. Get on board, children, children, get on board, children, children, get on board, children, children. Let's fight for human rights. I hear those mobs are howling, they're coming round the square. Send catch those freedom fighters, but we gonna beat them there. Oh, get on board, children, children, get on board, children, children, get on board, children, children. Let's fight for human rights. As fighters we go hungry, sometimes don't eat or sleep. But when you fight for freedom, in the end you will be free. Oh, get on board, children, children, get on board, children, children, get on board, children, children. Let's fight for human rights. Thank you.
Just in a sentence or two, say what the value of freedom songs were to the movement. That's a whole book, but just a couple of thoughts.
Well, I don't know whether other people where I was, but I grew up in a family that did a lot of singing. My family had a family quartet that we went about singing. And here again, the song, well, singing the different songs motivated people to get involved and to do some things. It motivated them so to people who thought they couldn't sing, you know, just like some of us. But once the spirit hit them and you got to move in, proved that they could do things greater than or more than what they thought they could do. And the reason I picked certain songs to sing at various points in time is because it was a message in the songs that was trying to get across to everybody that was a part of it. So didn't matter whether you were singing it or whether you were talking it. So long as you got it done. And I'm gonna stop right there because I'll start preaching. Bring on my friend, my co-worker, my student.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Brother C.B.
Yeah.
For Hollis Watkins. From Mississippi's madhouse swirling with a cobra's nest of combustible clan calamity, Hollis went marching into the breaking dawn of destiny, the son of a carpenter sent to construct some sovereignty for his people. He planted his body at the intersection of justice to be a champion for civil rights, a summit soldier sanctified by SNCC. He heeded the clarion call from a Moses, molding fishers of men, an early disciple of voter registration. His blood boiled for direct action, so the cool cowboy Curtis Hayes, they both sauntered into Dodge City like Bill Pickett and Nat Long. Hollis willingly walked into the Dragon's Lair filled with a flaming white violence of Woolworth drugstore, looking for the medicine of justice and demanding to be served a breakfast platter of dignity. One of the many Daniels who dared to be seated in the devil's dinner table like the snick shepherds, Hollis readily took the best cloth to wash the feet of the people while himself being marched from Judgment Hall to Judgment Hall, incarcerated for instigating humanity while shocking and shaking the stool stains of supremacy from Southern psychopaths. Singing civil rights night who preached the gospel of crimson sacrifice, melting Mississippi's Jim Crow iceberg so that we could all be baptized in the ruby river of righteousness. And when that McCone cage could no longer clip his wings, Hollis and Hayes strolled into the hell pit of Hattiesburg, working as door-to-door liberation witnesses while serving as sawmill stewards. But like all great bluesmen, Hollis knew he had to stand at the dusty crossroads of the Deep South dichotomy where direct action and voter registration danced as far too many well-fed, fat pig Negroes bloated from the middle-class delusion were cemented into submission by their ice-cold grip of economic frostbite. Still, Hollis submitted himself to serve more time than most people attend school, for his jail time becoming the fuel that finally ignited and freed the masses from their frigid fear while he fought for agendas that illuminated the shining souls of the oppressed rather than incinerating them into the ashes of somebody else's afterthought. From stampeding SNCC student to a Tougaloo tornado, twisting right wrongs into a rainbow of rights, then blossoming to a fiery freedom school professor, your life is a freedom song, played in the sprouting wind that drips along a magnolia breeze, pregnant with the evening storm clouds rolling over a Jim Crow river. Tomorrow's flowers will grow tall as they take communion from the root of your tree. We are soaked with your nectar so that we can continue to pollinate the movement from a SNCC baby, a Tougaloo troubadour, a freedom architect, a flower growing to forever. Thank you. Here's your chair, and then I'm going to bring, no, you get the big chair. I'm going to bring it for you.
Mr. McInnis,
Yes.
this is a chair you can use.
Oh, okay. Oh. Well, now I wanted to make sure that both of y'all had a seat, so I brought in
No,
another chair.
dear, we're good.
No. Come on. Here you go, sir. I want you to sit here. So, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about, Hollis mic'd up again. And we're going to talk a little bit about the book being, we're going to, stay to the time because we want to make, you guys have been here all week. We appreciate y'all coming. And so we're just going to play catch, as I said. I'm going to toss him some questions and he's going to hit home runs like he always does. My job is easy. I just get to ask questions. Sir?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to begin with the first question. I always like to begin, Hollis told me a lot of stories and I work chronologically. But I knew how I wanted his book to begin, but of course it was his book. But, so I want you to talk a little bit about how we open your book, which is, your father told you, said that the thing that was most important to you was something your father said when you were a child and it stayed with you and it drove you. That your father told you to always stand for what's right, even when you're the only somebody standing. And could you talk a little bit about him telling you that and how that motivated you through the entire movie?
My father told me that actually, if I was a plant, it caused me to be able to grow a foot or two high, just from that. Because I had seen him talk to different people, do different people this way and all of that. And all of the things that I had seen him do, I could see how it was wrapped up in that same little thing that he told me to do. So I said, well, I think I must prepare myself to be ready for whatever comes. So long as I'm right, I know I will ultimately be all right. See, tied into that piece, my father told me, he says, you must overcome fear. So that's one of our main enemies, is fear. And that's one of the things that we must make sure we do, is to overcome fear. My father said there are many battles you can win even without throwing a punch, but it has to do with fear. And I reaped the benefit of that, adhering to his saying and that which he was telling me. Because there was one time when I got arrested, Curtis and I got arrested, and the police didn't carry me back down to the large cell where other black students were being. He sent me upstairs in a little room and told me to sit here. I sat there, and as I sat there, I began to reflect back on what my father had said to me about fear. He said many people whip themselves and beat themselves before the fight or whatever gets started because they submit and succumbs to fear. And the other person knows that, feels that, sense that, and once it reaches that stage, you're already halfway defeated. I was in a little rocking chair upstairs, and I'm kind of reared back a little bit, you know, not too uncomfortable. But the door opened, and when the door opened, 3 white men walked through the door. And they had a hanging noose tied into a hanging rope. And they looked at me, and I looked at them. And they said to me, so, okay, nigga, so come on, so let's go. We're gonna have a hanging here today, and you gonna be first. And I thought about what my daddy had told me, son, said, you don't be afraid of nobody. Don't care how they might look or what they might do or what they may have. You don't be afraid of nobody. So I sat there and kind of straightened myself up in the chair, just like this. They stopped just once they made 1 or 2 feet inside the door. They stopped. And I'm sitting there that distance in the chair they had for me, and I'm looking at them. And the thoughts that running through my mind, I know you're trying to bluff me, but you won't be able to do that today. Because right now, I'm making plans as to how I'm gonna kill you. And so when I talked to some older people, they said, well, what happened was that fear that they threw to you, you repelled it back to them. And they began to become afraid of what might happen to them after you repeated what you did, showing no sign of fear. And they stood there for about 3 minutes, and they turned and they walked out. And I said, yeah. they did the right thing. Because I sure was gonna kill them.
So, let's talk about you first getting into the movement and you meeting this great man named Bob Moses, and Bob Moses, of course, had come to do organizing work. So let's talk a little bit about you meeting Bob and getting thrust into the core of movement work.
Yeah, I first met Bob, who had come from the Delta, and meeting and talking with Amsa Moore. Amsa Moore sent him to Macomb to meet and work with C.C. Bryant. Amsa Moore felt that he didn't have a strong enough organization going, and it would be better, more progress would be done if he went to Macomb and hooked up with C.C. Bryant. So I met a friend girl of mine out there in the country, and she told me, she says, Hollis, she says, from my understanding, Dr. Martin Luther King and some other big folks is out there in Macomb doing some voter registration. So I said, well, whereabouts? Tell me, because I'm thinking about Dr. King, that one of the big folks, that's what came to my mind. Wow, I'm gonna get a chance to see Dr. King. I'm gonna be right on time. I'm gonna be scared or nothing like that. I'm gonna walk right up to him and shake his hand and put a little grip on him. So I went on to the place where they told me Dr. King was going to be. And when I got out there, I'm expecting to go into this office and see this big Dr. King. I'm kind of posturing myself and all that. Don't see him, haven't seen him, so I'm not going to just leave it all. I got to stay in a defensive mode in case things go crazy. So that's what I did. And I asked him, I said, look, Mo, you Dr. King? He said, no, I'm Bob. Bob? Bob who? Moses. So, well, where is Dr. King? I want to see Dr. King. My name, he says, I don't know. You have to see Dr. King's folks in this organization because I don't know nothing about Dr. King. And I'm saying to myself, I said, things began to look funny. all the time. So, that didn't work out for me because I'm all excited and ready to go and meet Dr. King. And a couple of days later, I went out to Macomb and I met this guy who told me his name was Marion Barry.
Mm-hmm.
Marion Barry. He says, I'm in charge of one of SNCC's programs. SNCC got two programs, one working on direct action, the other one working on massive demonstration and that kind of stuff, a different kind of, not voter registration, but direct action. So, in talking to Marion says, we're gonna be having a workshop. We have a workshop, teach you how to do all that kind of stuff. He told me where that was gonna be the next day, and I participated in that. I'm ready to get things moving. Dr. King's supposed to be out here.
He ain't showed up yet.
Still hadn't showed up. At the end of the week, Dr. King still hadn't showed up. So Marion Barry said, well, we need to plan our own direct action groups. So that's the way that people do in the other areas. We plan our own direct action activities. So I said, well, how do we do that? He explained to us. So Marion Barry got us ready to move on out on this demonstration, to have a sit-in demonstration. lo and behold, we didn't know what all was supposed to be involved, but we found out that the white folks didn't want us coming into their place, sitting down asking for something to drink, or coffee, or something like that. So we turned around once or twice, but ultimately we decided to go on into the cafeteria. We had initially,
I was gonna say, go ahead. Go ahead.
we initially decided that we were gonna go to the public library.
There we go.
Not having done extensive investigation. When we got to the library was locked. Chain lock on the door. So it's, oh well, we're not gonna be defeated. And we're gonna go back down the street to where Woolworth lunch counter is, and we're gonna get it there. Got the Woolworth lunch counter, the waitress is down here on this end, and we waited till a seat became available at this end, and we ran and sat down. When we sat down there, the waitress just simply down to the other end and serving the white folks. So we didn't do such a good job, doing that. So that's how the civil rights movement really got a major kickoff in Mississippi, was from those little activities that we did in Macomb. I spent 34 days in jail, for trying to get a cup of coffee that didn't work. And one of the things I think is important that people know, because in most cases they miss the whole thing around sitting in at the Woolworth's lunch counter, getting arrested, and then planning a demonstration where that if the principal and them didn't allow Brenda Travis, which was the youngest person that was a part of our group, which was 50, she was all of 15 at that time. And while getting things ready, we decided that we had to start a freedom school.
So back up for a moment. So you and Curtis go to the Woolworth, you guys get arrested. And of course the part of that story, because he's, sometimes he was too modest to tell it, was a lot of them who had planned to go to the sit-in. But the day of the sit-in, only 2 of them decided to show up. So it was 20 of them when they was planning. Yeah, we're gonna go down there, we're gonna do this. That morning, that's about it. But, so they go, and as young people, some high school students said, well, it's not right that Hollis and Curtis them. So that Brenda Travis was a part of younger people. So they went and then sat in because Hollis them were in jail. And so all those kids got expelled from high school. And the principal of the high school would not allow Brenda to come back to school. And that's where, now go ahead, and that was, so that then gets us to the part, so go ahead, where you are.
Yeah, they wouldn't allow Brenda to come back to school. The students had decided that if Brenda was not allowed to come back to school, they were gonna have a walkout. And they stuck to that, because when they went to the forum that the school was having, they asked the principal, who was up speaking, and said, well, was Brenda allowed to come back to school? So we'll see you when the meeting is over. Somebody else says, I need to know right now. Was Brenda allowed to come back to school? Yeah, you definitely come. And about 5 or 6 people asked that question, and they said no. And finally, one of the young men said, this dude is shucking and jiving, man, so let's get out of here. And students got up and I guess, about 85 to 90% of student body at the school walked out. And that's where we really, really got to work, to moving and going on, and it grew. Now, this school,
The Freedom School.
yeah,
So before we get to the Freedom School, to understand the setup of the Freedom School, when these children when they walk out, they're all expelled. The problem is that they're able to graduate, or cannot go back, and then some even who want to go into college, so this goes on for a while. The governor decides that none of those children could be admitted into college, even though they had finished and got all of their high school credits. And so they instructed all of the black public schools, because understand the black public schools are under the thumb of the governor. And so the ones who had been expelled couldn't go to high school, and the others who were college age couldn't go to college. And so they were basically in limbo. As how do we get all these young people educated? And that gets us to where Hollis is now discussing the Freedom Schools.
that opened the door for us to really get off into the Freedom School. We created a Freedom School in one of the local churches there in Macomb. But the real saving grace for us is J.P. Campbell College. J.P. Campbell College had a junior college and finished high school. So when we went to J.P. Campbell College and explained the situation, so they said, give us 1 week and we'll make provision for all of the students. You're giving a number now, and we'll make provision. 1 week, we'll start accommodating all of the students you have. So
They were private, right?
yeah, J.P. Campbell College is owned by a Methodist church. So we felt real good, about that, and everything worked out extremely well. Naturally though, good old racist Mississippi, felt bad about that. And they put out another APB that none of the children that was a part of that group should be able to go to school in any of the public schools here in Mississippi. But J.P. Campbell College opened the door and students were able to go ahead on. So that shows a little diversity, but also it shows how serious and racist people in different positions of authority here in Mississippi was, because they intend and did make sure all of the doors for them young people to get an education all closed.
So we're going to transition, but just to put a cap on the J.P. Campbell College. So J.P. Campbell College was on the same street as Jackson State. Jackson State is a black public school. J.P. Campbell College is a black private school. So because the state didn't have any control over J.P. Campbell College, what they did was simply bought the land from underneath J.P. Campbell College and then gave the land to Jackson State to close J.P. Campbell College. Jackson State didn't want the land. They had been coexisting. They had like co-programs. It was just basically, two colleges in the same area, same mission. So that also gives you an understanding of just what kind of tyranny black people lived under. And so for many years, the one building that was remaining for years, they finally had to just tear that one down. It broke my heart that we couldn't come up with a way to refurbish it and save it. But again, that's just another example of how every aspect of the state of Mississippi was under that tyranny. I want to go to a couple of things because, from what I've been told, that you were one of the better drivers in the movement. And so in the book, you talk about this phrase, thank God for dirt roads, and thank God for certain types of windows. And so could you tell us a little bit about what you meant when you said, thank God for dirt roads?
Well, I was dealing with a question what are one or two of the things that you are most thankful? And I said, two things that I am most thankful of is dirt roads. The second one is vehicles not having the push button windows on them. So those were the two things that I was most appreciative. Now, a lot of folks look at me and say, "Oh, Hollis, are you all right?" Yeah, I'm all right. I'm letting you know things that I'm most thankful of. You know, dirt roads and the windows on vehicles that you can't just push a button and they go down. Now, what makes that so important for me in my situation? Okay, I was traveling, for example, on the highway between Chula and Greenwood. And next thing I know, white man is pulled up beside me in his truck, and he reaches over in his glove compartment and he pulls out one of them big long pistol shots. I call them mini tool shot. That's my definition for it. So pull up beside me and he did this. So instant moment of fear jumped in me, but then, you know, Almighty God wiped that out because he said, he can't let his woman down from over there. And said, you know he ain't gonna shoot his window just to get a good shot at you. So you go ahead and do it the way you're gonna do it. And I did it the way I could do it. Went on down a little piece and he turned off and went up into one of the plantations, and I kept on down the highway. Now, out there in the rural area, you know, we don't have much of what we call blacktops and all that kind of stuff. If you got a top, get dirty.
That ain't black.
That's not black. So that's what I looked at that and the thought that says, you know, as we went down these back rural country roads, our vehicles could not run very fast, but them raggedy rascals could kick up some dust. So he says, kick up the dust. We kick up the dust, and he can only get so close. So naturally, you pulling out, you see him pull out of his driveway, and now he's coming at you, and you see that. You just kind of slip in there, and, you know, and who knows? I believe it has saved some of our lives. So, you know, that's one of the couple of things that I'm thankful of not having dirty roads.
Having a window.
Having a window.
So, talk a little bit about, I mean, because, you know, it's funny, I think about this, you could almost, your story could almost be an action adventure spy movie, because you would have to go undercover. Talk about having to go undercover in disguise when you go out to the plantations to talk people to get into the movement and do voter registration and those types of things.
Going out to the plantation, yeah, you definitely needed to disguise yourself. And part of what that involved is speaking with the local family people and getting them to exchange positions with some some of the civil rights workers and arrested them. Why? They come and do nothing but sit down at the office and talk about the civil rights movement, while the handful of us talk with the family members with the hope in our hand for this chocolate time or whatever. So when the plantation owner came by way out there, he couldn't ever say, can't tell one nigga from another. So that's what we went. So we sent, you know, the brother or the sister out to go to the office while the one or two of us stayed out there and chopped cotton, you know, and made that thing possible for us. And speaking about chopping cotton, you know, I must say that Dick Gregory and Harry Belafonte, they did wonderful things for people in Mississippi. They talked to people up north, and they gathered up a couple of plane loads of clothes and flew them down here and gave them to people. This was the year when mechanization of farming equipment became very, very prevalent. So now you got a machine that can pick as much cotton in one day as 200 people. So you can see how you can very easily run into a situation where you don't need none of them to do nothing. So you dismiss them. So that was the year, that was in 1973 when they did that. They mechanized the farming equipment to a great extent. And we're thankful for the folks on that.
So most people in this room know who Cheney Goodman and Schroeder is. And so, but what I want you to discuss is, could you tell them where you were and what you were doing when Cheney Goodman and Schroeder were murdered, and connect it to, so just talk a little bit about what you were actually doing during that time and where you were at that time.
The time when they got arrested, I mean, Cheney and Goodman got arrested, I was up in Oxford, Ohio. SNCC was having its training session for the young people that were going to be coming down to Mississippi to work voter registration that summer. So I was up there partially fighting with the staff folks, SNCC staff folks, and partially ignoring them and moving on. See, once you did so much, you had a chance to know everybody, so you know how far they would go in terms of that, where you could take them and jump off and go on about your business. So I was doing one of those things, but that's what was doing was having training for all of the students that was coming down to work on the summer project.
Which would have been Freedom Summer.
Which was referred to as Freedom Summer.
And so the thing that with which you were struggling was, what were you thinking needed to be said or told?
The thing that I felt needed to be said and told was that if you are coming into Mississippi, you need to be prepared for a couple of things. You need to be prepared to be beaten. You need to be prepared to be put in jail. And the third thing, you need to be prepared, because it could possibly happen, you need to be prepared to give your life up for this work that we're getting some of the SNCC folks felt that that's crazy, we can't, that's kind of like a secret, we can't blow that.
Secret.
Can't blow that because they find out that it's that bad down there, we ain't gonna get nobody. So I told them, said, well, I'd rather not get anybody than bring somebody, 7,000 to 8,000 miles away, and they don't understand or know what all it is that they're getting into. So we had a little dealing with one another around that, and finally got to the point where I told them, I said, well, this is where I am. I said, I'm gonna be the project director for Holmes County. Everybody got that? Well, what you mean? I says, it means that I am going to Holmes County in about 5 minutes. I'm gonna take these many students with me, and we're gonna start doing the work. Whether you get locked up and stay up in Greenwood, that's you and your business. But I am going to Holmes County to do what needs to be done. And if anybody comes down there talking about them being the project director for Holmes County, you're gonna have to see and come through me. And I said, I don't mean do that, the non-violent stuff.
Why was Holmes County so important to you? What was it about Holmes County that you thought was really ready for movement work?
Well, the thing that led me to believe and know that Holmes County was ready is because before that, before the summer project, Holmes County had sent Ozell Mitchell, his sister, Al McConaughey, and a couple other guys, I can't think of the name right now, had sent them to, what the name of it was in the book.
So get the book, you'll get the names.
So we pull that piece off, and thankful didn't nobody come down there and try to kick me out, and we went on exceptionally well. Got a lot of people registered. And the other thing that I didn't want people who didn't know what they were doing to mess up. Holmes County was a county that was predominantly black. Holmes County was about 75% black, and the blacks owned about 75% of all the land. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, I don't want some well thought of, interested person coming down and messing up a county of people that have this greater potential. And that's the position of the ground that I was covering for when I said, talking everything was over, I'm going to Holmes County. If you come down there saying this, you just be prepared to beat me and I hate you.
So, two stories I want to end because it's short of time. So I want to deal with two stories. Prior to Holmes County, you and Curtis in Hattiesburg, and you working with the great Berman Dana. For those of you who don't know, Berman Dana was stalwart in the movement, and he was also a farmer, and so he used his position as a farmer because he had an independent wealth that he could bring in movement workers, and he couldn't get NAACP. He was a member of the NAACP, but he couldn't get NAACP workers to come in and do the counter voter registration that he needed done. So he reached out to SNCC, and that's how Hollis and Curtis ended up at Hattiesburg. there's a funny twist to this story, which is everybody loved Medgar. So people who didn't necessarily deal with the NAACP loved Medgar Evers because Medgar Evers was one of the few people who worked with everybody. He didn't care about your affiliation, he didn't care about your age. But there's a funny story that I want you to tell about. So you and Curtis are basically on NAACP territory doing big work on Bernie Davis' farm. And so the head, Roy Wilkinson of NAACP, sends Medgar to go tell Vernon Damer that y'all got to go. And can you tell about the story that Vernon Damer says to Medgar about Roy Wilkins sending them that y'all have to go?
Well, Mr. Damer made it short, sweet, pretty, very definite. He said that they didn't run the voter registration project down in Forest County. They didn't, and I'm saying Roy Wilkinson is the day that didn't run it. That he and a few other people ran it and said, long story short, that if you don't like it, then you and a group of folks come down here and meet with me. And if I think you qualified, then I tell you, you can stay. But if I don't think you qualified, then I'll let you know and you can go back where you came from. But that's my position, and I don't expect anybody to be going against this because these are our people. You hadn't thought about them, hadn't done anything for them along these lines. So we're going to have to tighten up, and we're going to continue to do what we've been doing. And y'all got some money you're going to send to us? Send that money. And we will put it to good use. So that's the kind of things that Vernon Damer put on the.
And his reward for that, unfortunately, was to be killed in his store. It was firebombed because his store is where he would pay the poll tax.
Yeah.
The poll tax. So he would pay that out of his pocket so the black people in his area could vote. And so they knew if they destroyed that economic base. So they killed him in his car. So I don't know if you guys got a chance when you went to the museum, there's a dashboard of a burned up, that's Vernon Damer's car. And that was done. But that was the kind of man that sent for this kind of man to go in that area and do that kind of work. So I want to fast forward. We've been jumping around. Years later, you get into the 90s and you decide to organize Southern Echo with Mike Sayer and Leroy Johnson. And could you talk a little bit about, because what you guys did, and you know the number, and I always forget the number, but you guys tripled the amount of elected officials after the 1990 census. So talk a little bit about the work that y'all did in getting Southern Echo together and how what it is that you did to triple the amount of black elected officials in the state of Mississippi.
We basically, the thing that we did, we basically, as some would say, we basically opened the door and invited people to come in and be a part of, and let folks know that if they wasn't already a part of and wanted to be a part of, the door stood open. And we would ask them to be sure to come back and use them as some bait. When you come back, I don't want to see you as yourself. I want to see you as a person that's got 2 or 3 other people. these will be the people that you will work with the most of the time. So that's what we did, because we knew, based on our having been out there and meeting and being a part of what the organization was trying to do, we knew that there was a number of people that was out there willing to do some work. All that needed to be done was treated as somebody.
And to be clear, that work, it was twofold. The first part of the work is that you guys went into these rural communities and said to the people of the rural communities, hey, after this census, you have a right to come to these hearings to decide where these lines are drawn, to decide what your voting district is going to be. And that had never happened before. And then after they did that, after they got the lines drawn, you then kept that machine of people and said, oh, and by the way, now that you've decided how the lines are drawn, you get to pick the people who run for office. And that's critically important. That had a coalition of people to do two things. Black people, for the first time in history, deciding not just that we want to vote, but we have a right to have electable districts. And it was directly the work of Southern Echo and fighting with elected officials to make sure that those lines were drawn properly. And could you tell a story about how you got, and so that working was something, that training, that you would train people that when you would go to the courthouses, they could argue with the white elected officials about where the lines should be. And I'm thinking particularly about the story where you had trained the guy to talk about the rules of the book. Do you remember that story? No.
Did I hear somebody over here? See, one of the things I found out real early, when you talk about the rules of the book, all you need to do is learn 2 or 3 of them rules. Because when the folks out in the community who want control don't know how to control, should not be in control, drop some of that on you, then you tell them that you want to come and show us what you got. Just show me what you got. We're gonna do a small plan to see how you gonna come out and drawing that plan, to see how many districts it can go here and there, and see whether you're qualified. You need to study a little bit. And what we realized is that there were a lot of people who were willing, but the truth is that they did not have the information they needed to do that. And we said, hey, this is another door that's open where we can have training sessions for our people. Set up certain dates in different counties by which we will do a certain amount of training. And as a result of doing that, we were able to increase the number of blacks in the state legislature. I think we went from 21 to, what's that now? It was somewhere going from something like 21 to the low 40s. That's the increase that we brought in. And we had several negotiations with Governor Mavis, who was the state's person, that had several meetings with him. And we decided that we were going to tell the folks we were ready to have a meeting to finalize things with the state officials, and they thought they had it, and we were ready to cave in, but we were ready to draw our own map. That's what we did. We drew our own map, and we had been talking about making a compromise with them, and finally we told them we were ready to make a compromise, and compromise that we were talking about would give us increase from the low 20s to the mid 40s. That was the difference. And when we went back and we told them, they told us it can't be done. It's crazy. I mean, that's crazy. How in the world can you do? We just simply said, by putting the proper numbers together. That's how you do it. And that's what we did. You know, they finally accepted. You know, we moved on, and that's one of the things that has given blacks in Mississippi a little leeway and a little jump being there.
And so,
also, so that we had a lot of good volunteers that came, you know, and some was pretty good, did a halfway job, and some did an excellent job. And show you how some people are. We were at a time of beginning in our stage, and Lee wasn't charging us. You know.
I was charging for the lunches. That's how they wrote me in. They had the best lunch in town.
But actually we did. And here again, you know, I'm thankful for people like Lee. Thankful for people, like Derek Johnson.
Derek Johnson, who is now the head of the National NAACP. He was, before that position, the head of the Mississippi NAACP. And before that position, he was an intern and grassroots organizer for Southern Echo under Hollis Watkins. So the man who is leading the oldest civil rights organization in the world trained at the feet of Hollis. And I went over there because the lunches were good. and so what I want to do is, because of time, we know you guys have been busy, and we always appreciate you coming. If there's just one or two questions that are burning, anything that somebody would want to say, we don't want to hold you guys too long, but if there's maybe something you want to ask Hollis or something you want to, the one thing I will tell you about the book that he was alluding to, so two things you'll find about the book. Hollis did not want to write a memoir. He was not interested. So when you read the book, what you will find is what you're really reading is a training manual. It is written from the perspective of, these are the things that we did. Here's what we did right. Here's what we did wrong. And here's how you can take those lessons and apply them today. So that's the first thing you're going to get from this book. The second thing that I really like about the book is, in the middle of this book, snap dab in the middle of this book, is a chapter dedicated to workers whose names you will never know. And Hollis made sure, and we combed through records and we met with folks, that people that because that was one of the issues that why Hollis wanted to write the book, is that he wanted people to know the civil rights movement was not a top-down movement. It was a bottom-up movement. And so that always meant a lot to me, that he wanted to make sure that people who left his book left there knowing that everyday people who did nothing more than maybe cook dinners for people or allow freedom riders to stay in their house, or people who brought money, or women who collected money at their church and brought it to the movement. That everybody who had a desire to play a part in the movement. And that to me is one of the special chapters about it. So again, if there's anybody who just has any burning question or burning comment.
I have a question. So when you went to the plantation to get people to register, and I really love the story about the undercover work. So were they allowed to leave the plantation to vote or to register to vote? How did they do that? Could you register them there?
We had to get them away from
And were they, could they?
there. Could they get away?
Yeah.
You know, when you committed and got your mind made up, you figure out how to do something. The man wasn't riding down in the field where they were, you know, because that's too much like being a real farmer. They observe it from the road. So how many niggas you got down there? Yeah, they all. But three out of the one you count don't belong to you.
Got it. Got it.
And them three is getting ready to make a move with three others.
So they would switch clothes. So Holliston would go in and put
Okay.
on their clothes, and they would put on Holliston clothes.
Got it.
And they would go and get trained and registered, right? And they would work.
Okay, so they were registered when they came back.
Exactly. Other one other question or comment or? Yeah.
And one other little piece of stuff that I had to go through with, I spent 55 days
Yeah.
in maximum security unit departure.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And a lot of that in the hole, in solitary. So, yeah. And that's covered, that's one of the pieces that's in the book that people, because that's the one thing that I wanted people to know was about the fear and about the terror. So it's not a touchy-feely kumbaya text. It really is because I think that as generations get further from it, they don't understand the fight that it took, right? And so if these younger people don't understand the fight that it took, they will be easy to allow the clock to be rolled back. So that's one of the things, that 55 days, and people who commented on the book have said that part of the book really moved from. It's late, and we appreciate y'all, and so thank y'all for having us. People who've been shepherding y'all, come back to the front.